Welcome to the deep dive. We're taking your curiosity, your sources, and really getting into the core of an idea.
Yep.
And today, it's all about one word, anomaly. You hear it a lot, right, in all sorts of places.
Definitely. And you've sent over a great mix of finance, language, philosophy of science, medicine, even some online discussions.
So our mission today is to unpack this word, see what's underneath, maybe find some surprising connections.
Exactly. It seems simple, but looking at how it's used, well, it tells us a lot about how we categorize things, how we see the world.
Okay, let's start right at the source. The word itself, anomaly. Where does it actually, come from? What's the origin story?
Sure. So if you look at Wiktionary or Etymology,
Yeah.
they trace it back pretty clearly. It comes from Latin anomalia,
Okay.
which in turn comes from the Greek anomalia. And that basically meant irregularity or unevenness.
Irregularity, unevenness, right. So something not quite standard.
Exactly. And you can break down the Greek even further. Anoumalos, that's the adjective, is made up of anal, which is a negative prefix like not or without, and homolos, meaning even. And homolos goes back to homos, which just means same.
Oh, okay. So not the same, not even, not regular. It's built right into the word's history.
Precisely. That core idea of deviating from the norm, from the standard pattern, it's been there from the start.
That gives us a solid baseline. Now, finance, that's one area where you hear anomaly thrown around quite a bit. Market anomalies. What's the deal there?
Right. So the Investopedia piece frames these as essentially exceptions to the efficient market hypothesis.
Okay, and remind us the efficient market hypothesis is the idea that basically all known information is already baked into stock prices. So you can't consistently beat the market.
That's the gist of it, yeah. It suggests everything's priced rationally based on available info.
But anomalies imply, well, maybe not always, little wrinkles in the theory.
Exactly. They suggest there might be predictable patterns or opportunities that, according to the strict theory, shouldn't exist. Investopedia lists quite a few alleged ones.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, there's the small firm effect. This is the observation that, over time, smaller companies have tended to generate higher returns than larger ones.
Any reason why that might happen?
The common thinking is smaller companies just have more room to grow, a longer runway, maybe, compared to giant corporations.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. A smaller boat can change course faster, maybe grow quicker. What else?
Then you've got the January effect. This is the idea that stocks that didn't do so well in the last quarter of the year,
Yeah.
they tend to rebound in January, perform better,
Why January specifically?
often linked to tax loss harvesting. So investors sell losing stocks at the end of the year to offset capital gains taxes.
Ah, okay. So they dump the losers in December, which maybe pushes the price down too much.
Exactly. And then in January, maybe those stocks look like a bargain, or the selling pressure is just gone and they bounce back.
Interesting. So tax strategies could create a kind of predictable wobble.
Potentially, yeah. Then there's the idea that stocks with a low price-to-book ratio tend to do better.
Price to book. So the company's market price compared to its actual net asset value on paper.
Right. The theory is these are undervalued companies, and the market will eventually realize it, pushing the price up.
Makes sense. But does it work?
Investopedia adds a note of caution there. It says this anomaly is kind of weak, and you really only see potential benefits across big, diversified portfolios. Nice.
So the big picture on these financial anomalies, it sounds like they're deviations, yes, but maybe not reliable pathways to profit.
That seems to be the takeaway.
Yeah.
They're interesting. They challenge the simplest market models, but Investopedia definitely warns that trading based on them is risky. They might not be real or predictable, or the edge might be incredibly tiny.
Okay, good context. Let's switch gears completely. You mentioned online discussions. There was a Reddit thread from R Words. What kind of anomalies were they talking about?
Yeah, that was interesting. It shifted the focus to language itself. People on our words were fascinated by linguistic anomalies.
Yeah.
Weird words, new words, neologisms, words with strange spellings or histories, odd pronunciations.
So exceptions to the usual rules of grammar or vocabulary.
Exactly. It really highlights how people are drawn to things that don't quite fit the standard linguistic patterns we use every day. It's a sort of curiosity about the outliers in language.
Celebrating the quirks. I like that. And then there was another Reddit thread, RSCP. That's usually about fictional anomalies, right? But this discussion was different.
Yeah, SCP is built around fiction documenting and containing strange, often supernatural things. But in the thread you found, people were discussing real-world history. They were pointing out historical events or figures that seem, well, anomalous. Hard to explain conventionally.
Real-life anomalies. Like what?
They mentioned people like Terrer, this guy from the 18th century with just an unbelievable appetite, or the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack in Victorian England, this figure who supposedly made incredible leaps.
Wow. Okay. Those sound pretty weird.
Definitely. They also brought up bigger historical mysteries like, why did the Indus Valley civilization collapse so suddenly?
Yeah.
Or what happened to the Roanoke colony? And even persistent myths or cryptozoological legends that science hasn't explained.
So here, anomaly means something in the real world, often historical, that just doesn't neatly fit our standard understanding or explanations. Something that feels off.
Precisely. It's about those things that kind of defy our neat historical or scientific narratives, the unexplained loose ends that capture our imagination.
Okay, that broadens the concept quite a bit. Now let's get a bit more theoretical. Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. This is a landmark book, and you said he talks about anomalies playing a huge role in science itself.
Absolutely. For Kuhn, anomalies aren't just minor annoyances in science. They are fundamentally important. They are the engines of scientific change.
How so? He talks about paradigms, right?
Yes. Kuhn says that most science, what he calls normal science, operates within a dominant paradigm. Think of it as the accepted framework, the core theories, the standard methods, the shared assumptions that scientists in a field use.
So, like, Newtonian physics was a paradigm for a long time.
Exactly. And within that paradigm, scientists work on solving puzzles that the paradigm predicts and allows. They flesh out the details, extend the theories.
Okay, so where do anomalies fit in this normal science?
Anomalies, for Kuhn, are the persistent problems. They're observations or experimental results that the existing paradigm can't adequately explain or resolve. They're the results that just don't fit the puzzle box.
The stubborn facts that contradict the theory.
Right. And initially, scientists might try to tweak the theory or question the experiment. But if an anomaly is significant, and if it resists all attempts to solve it within the current paradigm,
Then what?
then it can start to cause problems. If enough significant anomalies pile up, it can lead to what Kuhn calls a crisis. Confidence in the existing paradigm starts to waver.
So the anomalies chip away at the foundation of the accepted view.
You can put it that way, yeah. And this crisis period is when scientists might start looking for radically new ideas outside the old framework.
And that can lead to a revolution.
Exactly. A scientific revolution happens when a new paradigm emerges. A new theory, a new way of looking at things that can explain the anomalies that troubled the old one. And crucially, it often changes the very questions scientists ask and how they look for answers.
Like the shift from Newton's physics to Einstein's. Einstein's theories could explain things like the orbit of Mercury that were anomalies for Newtonian physics.
Precisely. Or the shift from the phlogiston theory of combustion to Lavoisier's oxygen theory. The new paradigm resolved the persistent anomalies of the old one.
So in science, an anomaly isn't just an error. It can be a signpost pointing towards a deeper, perhaps revolutionary understanding.
That's Kuhn's argument. He even suggests that the paradigm influences what scientists see. An anomaly is something that clashes with their paradigm-driven expectations. It's hard to perceive clearly until the paradigm shifts.
Wow. That our framework shapes our perception. That's deep.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, one more context. Medicine. You included an article about medically unexplained symptoms, or MUS. How is that an anomaly?
Right, MUS. These are physical symptoms people genuinely experience, but doctors can't find a clear organic cause using current medical tests and knowledge.
That's the basic idea, and the article positions these MUS as anomalies within the standard medical model. They deviate from the usual pattern where we expect a physical symptom to have a diagnosable, identifiable physical cause.
So the anomaly isn't necessarily the symptom itself, like pain or fatigue, but the lack of a satisfactory explanation within our current medical framework.
Exactly. The article points out there are different ways to look at it. One way, the doxic framing focuses on the symptoms and the missing pathology, like we can't find anything wrong. But another view, a heterodox one, shifts the focus. It suggests maybe MUS highlight the limits of our current medical understanding. Perhaps it's less about the symptoms being inherently weird and more about our failure to understand them with the tools and paradigms we currently have.
So it's like medicine running up against phenomena that don't quite fit its current map of the body and disease.
Yeah, something like that. It points to the edges of medical knowledge, areas where our models might be incomplete or need rethinking.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, finance, language, history, science, medicine, there's a really strong common theme, isn't there?
It seems so. In every case, anomaly points to a deviation, something that breaks from the established norm, the expected pattern, the dominant paradigm of that particular field.
And the meaning or importance of the anomaly really depends on that specific context, on that framework.
Absolutely. A market anomaly challenges economic theory. A weird word sparks linguistic curiosity. An unexplained event makes us question history. A scientific anomaly can trigger a revolution. And MUS push the boundaries of medicine.
This has been really illuminating, taking one word and seeing how it echoes across so many different ways of thinking.
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about the norms and expectations in your own world. Your job, your hobbies, your life. What might count as an anomaly there?
Yeah, what are the things that don't quite fit the pattern?
And what might those anomalies be telling you? Could they be little signs that things are changing or that the standard way of thinking isn't the whole story? Maybe even hints of a whole new way of seeing things.
Definitely something to chew on. We hope this deep dive encourages you to look closer at those sources and maybe notice the anomalies around you with a bit more curiosity. You never know what insights they might unlock.